Hey everybody, welcome to another review video, this one on vocab number 5. As you all know, I'm Mr. Marshall, and these are the 15 words that you need for this vocab list. So to start off, we got ratify, to approve. Whether we're approving treaties, whether we're approving the Constitution itself, you have to ratify it. Once you ratify it, it's real, it takes effect. So only the Senate can ratify the treaty. They're the only ones that can say that it's good, that it is now real, it is now ratified, it is now approved. Right? So the best example of ratifying something is the Senate ratifying the treaties. Right? Because remember, the president negotiates it, the Senate ratifies it. The next one, we have the census, a counting of the population. We do a census every 10 years. They send little, pieces of paper around to everybody in the mail. Sometimes they have people walk around, but not everywhere. And you get this little piece of paper and you fill in little bubbles like 6 people live here. And they collect some demographic data, like how far you might commute to work or something. But it's really just a counting of the population, mainly for the House of Representatives. Right? A little bit for funding, so they know how many people are in a specific place, how much money to send. But it's really to know how many guys to send to the House. So like, Montana or Alaska, Montana probably has more cows than people. So they only get one guy. He goes over to Washington, D.C., and he does his lonely guy thing. California, Texas, they got millions and millions of people. So they all get together in a big group, go over to Washington, D.C., and they have a lot more power because they have a lot more people. And then every 10 years, they do another counting, they do another census, and everything kind of changes depending on, how the population is moving around in the country. Next, we have the amendment, which is a change in the U.S. Constitution. This is how you change the Constitution, and there have been very few amendments over the years. The first 10 amendments were in the Bill of Rights, which are all right here, right to bear arms, quartering of soldiers. They kind of added these into the Constitution to make sure that we had our rights. Some other amendments guaranteeing the women's right to vote, women's suffrage, getting rid of slavery was a big one. So amendment is how you change the Constitution. Right? There can be changes in the way the Constitution is interpreted, but that's not an amendment. That's judicial review through the Supreme Court. For now, amendments, the way you change it. Next, we have a bunch of different kinds of powers. And on your quiz on Friday, these powers are really good to kind of explain together, as long as you remember which one goes where. Because it's really, really easy to mix them up. But once you get them down, it's really, really easy to talk about them. So like a delegated power, that's a power that only the federal government has, only the national government, Washington, D.C. These are the guys that print out all the money. These are the guys that declare war. These powers let them do that, so that only those guys can declare war. Only those guys can print money, because it says that specifically in the Constitution. Right? Delegated powers, federal government. Now, the opposite of these is the reserve powers. That's only the states. They're the ones that conduct elections. They're the ones that license professionals like teachers, lawyers, doctors, anything like that. So delegated, reserved. Right. Now right here, you see the delegated on the left, declare war, only the federal government. On the right, you have the reserved, conducting elections, maintaining schools. Right. Now in the middle, these, like raise taxes, borrow money, those are concurrent powers. Right. So they're powers that both the state and the federal government can do. Right? So like the power to tax. Both the state and the federal government do tax us. And that's how they get their money to be able to do all the cool stuff that they do. So when you guys get to writing your paragraphs, you can say, a delegated power allows the national government to declare war. And then you could say, a reserve power, which is opposite the delegated because only the states can do it, is to establish schools. And and they're able to pay for the schools through the taxes that they raise through concurrent powers. So there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of fit all these three into a paragraph. The next ones that kind of go together is the elastic clause and the necessary and proper clause. Because the Regents loves to kind of group these two and implied powers together, because they're really saying the same thing. You have the elastic clause, being stretching the Constitution like a rubber band. The part of the Constitution which allows the Constitution to be stretched when needed. Right? Now, the amount that it's stretched is all dependent upon how you kind of view the Constitution. Like, are you going to be very, very strict and not stretch it at all, just kind of be in the box, which is fine? Or are you going to kind of think outside the box and kind of stretch the Constitution maybe more than it should be? And that's all dependent upon your view. There's a lot of politicians out there that think one way or the other. Not that they're wrong. It all depends on the situation. And necessary and proper clause. Congress has the right to make all laws that are necessary and proper. So they can stretch the Constitution to do what is necessary and proper. Right? So they're kind of the same thing, but the wording on them is very different. And the Regents loves to kind of switch it up, so to speak. Then the next one is the implied powers, which is powers that are assumed to be necessary and proper. Like, what is implied? Right? Now, the main way to tell the difference is it's assumed. Right? Because it's implied. You're not just flat out telling somebody they can do something. They're implying that you can do something. Right? So all three of these, implied, elastic clause, necessary and proper clause, really, really go together. So you have all three of them right there, all mean the same thing. Stretch the Constitution to do what is necessary when needed. Right? If you can just kind of like remember all three of them are all just trying to do what is necessary and proper to do what's needed, stretch it when it's appropriate, you're good. And then lastly, there are the denied powers. No one can do these things. They are not available to anyone. Right? Like habeas corpus, the right to a speedy trial, you cannot take that away. Right? That always have that no matter what. Right? Now, Lincoln does take it away later, but only during times of war. So we always have that. Making laws ex post facto, having no kings, like you can never do these things. Right? And then the unwritten Constitution. Precedents and procedures not officially in the Constitution. So these are more like traditions, more like customs, things we do because they're a good idea and we've always done them. Right? For example, the president's cabinet. You got Obama right there. Now, he's only one guy. He cannot run an entire country. He needs advisors. He needs all of these guys and girls kind of sitting around him looking all super important, giving him advice, being like, we should raise the taxes, we should lower taxes, we should spend more money on chickens and birds, whatever it might be. They give him advice. Another big example is the political parties. It doesn't say anything anywhere that we have to have political parties, right? And we have these things, but they're not written down, right? We have them for a reason, but they're not written anywhere. Next one is lobbying, which is conducting a campaign to influence members of a legislature to vote according to a group's special interest. Right? Now, lobbying is pretty much when somebody gives somebody money, and then, just kind of like, hey, I'm giving this money to help out your campaign because I think that you're a good politician. If you stop being a good politician, I'm going to stop giving you money. But it all depends on if they're being a good politician for them or for somebody else. So lobbying is pretty controversial, and there's a lot of money that goes into it. Because conducting these campaigns can get pretty expensive. You need ad space on TV, you need to be able to drive around the country, you need to be able to pay for all your meals, your gas. So lobbying gets to be a pretty big deal. And we're going to talk about this a good bit later on too. Next two, we have the popular election. Each person's vote counts towards choosing the winning candidates. Right? So if 10 people vote, you get 10 votes. Right? Every person's vote counts once. That's how almost all of our elections are in the United States. The only one that's not is for the president, because that one is the Electoral College. But popular election, each person votes once. Right? And that's a whole bunch of people of different colors that I can't see all lining up to vote. And then you have levy, to impose or collect taxes. Right? So when they levy a tax, they're imposing a tax on us and are going to be collecting the monies. Right? And that's how the government gets its money to do stuff. And then we have reapportion, which is redefining representation proportional to the population in certain areas. Okay? Now, I showed you that map earlier about the representation in different areas. You know, California was at 53, Montana, also known as Cowland, was at 1. You know, Alaska, the freezing zone, was at 1. Now, every 10 years when they redo that census, they have to reapportion the areas. They have to change based on the population. So, New York, we lost a bunch of people, went down 2, they moved to Florida, Florida goes up 2. It's just, you know, just the way it is. Now, hopefully, when those people move down there, they live great lives in warm weather, because it's cold up here, and that's usually why they move. And that's it for the show, guys. I hope you guys are studying good and making sure that you do all